Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 407. 3 Fighting Games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is brought to you by GameToppersLLC.com. If you haven't been over to GameToppersLLC.com, we've been telling you to for quite some time now. What is your problem? Go to GameToppersLLC.com and check them out. No, they really are fantastic. You've probably seen our Game Toppers if you've ever been visiting with us in person. You've probably seen some pictures maybe. If you've joined us for an event, you've seen them. They are fantastic. They will improve your experience playing any game, really. They're just phenomenal. If you don't know what they are, I'll give you a little clue. They're awesome. They sit on any table. There's several different sizes, several different types, but they'll turn whatever game table you're using into a more fantastic game table. Larger play area, raised edges to keep your components on the table. Get these awesome mats for them. You can get leaves to expand them. You can get all sorts of accessories to go with them for your drinks, for all sorts of things. They really are worth a shot. Go check them out, GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I am Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holliday.
And we are minus Logan again this week. We're hoping that he'll be able to join us on our next episode. Visit us on our website, meeplenation.com. We've got blogs that you can enjoy. Every week we release a new blog. Episodes that you get to peruse through. All of our episodes are on there. So if you want to check out any of our past episodes, go ahead and check those out, give them a listen, and all of our episodes each week are going to be uploaded onto the website as well. We are also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, so check us out there. And you can email us with any questions or comments that you have at meeplenation@gmail.com.
This week, we are continuing our fighting games, which we're not fighting with Logan. Logan is just working. I was looking forward to his choice. This week, we're continuing on that fighting theme, and we've each picked a game. So now that I've mentioned Logan's choice, Logan was going to talk about Hungry Hippos. I'm not sure why Logan's been on this kick that every time we have a theme, he tries to pick the most generic, older game out there. So like he picked Monopoly, The Game of Life. He was going to pick Hungry Hippos this time. So I'm actually a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to discuss Hungry Hippos.
I am too. In fact, I was excited because I was going to mention when he was talking about it that my kids for youth activity did live action Hungry Hippos in
I've
the
seen
gym.
clips of that.
They had a ton of fun doing that.
It actually looks like fun. The laundry basket, they're going out there trying to scoop up the plastic balls and while somebody else is pushing them out like on a skateboard or little roller carts. That would have been a great discussion that I guess we're kind of already still having.
Thank you, Logan.
Yeah, thanks for picking Hungry Hippos, Logan. Maybe we'll have to allow you to discuss it in a future point. But with this episode, each of us have picked a game that has fighting as an element. I guess I'll start. I'll start with my game is Pirates Cove. Pirates Cove is a 3 to 5 player game, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes, designed by Paul Rendels and Daniel Stahl, released through Days of Wonder. It doesn't look like it's a game that's still available, but you might be able to find it on eBay or the Board Game Geek GameSwap area. This game is probably one of my earliest pirate games that I played, and when it came out in 2002, it's a game that we played quite a bit. I loved it because it was one of the very first games that used a rondel, so it was one of the first games that I played that used a rondel, which I thought was very unique. Not a ton of games currently even use a rondel as an action selection tool. Should be used more often. I like the idea of you select an action in Pirates Cove where you select which island that you're going to go to on that. And so if two players choose the same island, then those players have to fight to see who gets to go to the island, and then the loser goes to Pirates Cove. Everybody can go to Pirates Cove. Everybody gets along when they visit Pirates Cove. So the basis of the game is we are all pirates, and we are managing our pirate ship. The pirate ship has 4 rows on it, and these rows indicate the sails, which are how fast your ship goes, the crew, how many crew you have on your ship, And the cannons, to use your cannons, you have to have equal amount of crew to cannons to use those. And then you also have the hull of the ship. And the larger the hull, the more loot or treasure that you can hold. As you collect treasure and as you win treasure, you want to collect enough so you can go to Treasure Island and bury your treasure, because all good pirates bury their treasure. And there's also, as you're traveling around, the Royal Navy that you need to try to avoid until your ship is strong enough to attack and eliminate the Royal Navy. Then there is also legendary pirates that you also need to be aware of. Once you have enough strength, you can try to attack that legendary pirate. Because anytime you're in combat, you're going to gain victory points. You're going to gain fame if you see another ship retreat. It's one way to gain those fame points, and as you go to Treasure Island, you bury a treasure, you gain those fame points. And then you can go to the tavern and you can get tavern cards, and then these tavern cards will give you iconic things like parrots. Parrots will help you boost your sails, they'll help you boost your crew, boost your cannons, boost the whole of your ship. There's cards in the tavern that will give you fame points, as well as Mastercraft, which will also allow you to boost any one of those stats on your ship. And then there's some event cards, and these event cards will allow you to upgrade part of your ship. They'll upgrade your combat sometimes. And then you can also get battle cards, which will give you grappling hooks, a grapple attack that will allow you to roll the number of dice as indicated as your crew. In a normal attack, you're going to roll the lesser of your crew or your cannons. This grapple attack allows you to roll just dice that are equal to your crew. So if you have a whole bunch of crew and your cannons are down, this gives you a huge advantage to not have to have both of those stats equal, be able to roll more dice.
Cool things about the game is, for example, in the example you gave, you can dull your crew, but you get to target any part of anybody's ship that you want. So if you only have 2 cannons, someone could target your cannons and could very easily destroy you. It's one of those games where you kind of want to keep your ship balanced. If you have the opportunity to upgrade your ship a lot at one of the islands, it's good to do that. At the same time, you don't want to ignore any part of your ship. Legendary pirates, that each specific pirate will say on their card what they target.
I guess to go along with that, once any one of those 4 stats on your ship is reduced to 0, you must flee. You'll flee to Pirate's Cove, and then on your next turn, you're going to have to go back to one of those islands to start repairing your ship, which I think is great. It's very thematic, right? So you went into battle, or you weren't ready for battle, you mistakenly came across the same island as another pirate, they attacked you, you lost crew, or your ship hull was damaged, so you got to repair the ship hull, you got to hire more crew.
So one other thing to mention is you can carry as much treasure as your hull will allow. If someone targets your hull in a battle and you're carrying a boatload of treasure and you have not gone to Treasure Island to bury that treasure, you can end up losing treasure because your hull gets reduced down to where you have more treasure than what it can hold. You end up having to dump that treasure.
Can't you just get rid of crew members instead?
Nope, because your crew is a completely separate stat. It has no bearing on what your hull value. The hull value only has bearing on how much treasure you can hold.
I'm just saying, what kind of pirate throws the treasure overboard before he throws the...
So the game board consists of 7 islands. Around the outside of the board is the Cannon Island, the Crew Island, the Tavern Island, the Hull Island, and the Sail Island. So you go to any one of those locations and you can spend resources to upgrade those items. And so if you go to Tavern Island, you're not upgrading anything there. You're going and you're drawing cards, which, as mentioned, can be some of those event cards, those fame cards, parrots, combat cards, or Mastercraft card. You can find any of those there. And then when you go to any of the other islands, if there's another pirate there, you're going to combat that pirate. Whoever wins that combat is going to stay at that island. There are cards that are randomly dealt. Because the game is played over 12 months, pirates are going out and they're raiding for 12 months. In each of the islands, there's a stack of 12 cards, so you flip over that card. These stats are available prior to the navigation phase so that you know what rewards you're going to get at that island. Some of them will allow you to draw treasure cards. Some of them will allow you to gain coins, which you'll put in your hull. Some of them will give you cards, and then some of them will just give you fame. If you're the last pirate at the island, you get to claim those rewards on the card. And then if you battled and you lost, you go to the Pirate's Cove. If you go to Pirate's Cove, you'll collect 1 tavern card, 2 gold, or 2 tavern cards. If your ship was crippled, then you can repair by paying 2 gold for each crippled section, moving that strength marker to the second rank or the beginning rank. The way you keep track of your ship stats is each player has 4 wooden tokens, wooden rings, so that you can see the stat of your ship through the ring. You can just slide it up and down. As your stats get improved or your ship gets damaged, then you can use those to repair. You can go to Treasure Island. You can bury treasure and gold there. For each treasure you bury, you get 1 fame, and for each set of 3 gold coins, you also get a fame. And so at the end of the year, whichever pirate has the most fame becomes a legendary pirate and wins the game. So this is a great game. I haven't played it for years, though. I actually haven't played it for 7 years because my daughter used one of my pirate ships that came from the game in an art diorama set in her junior high class. It was her last day of school, last year in junior high. And so she used this ship, and then she left the school, and I never got my ship back. I was a little upset.
You need to get your ship together.
That's probably staying in. So, I was probably 2 years ago. Maybe it wasn't even that long ago, Andy.
It was about a year ago.
About a year ago, I knew Andy had the same game. I was like, oh, we should see if there's a print out there to print me a new pirate ship. And Andy's like, I'm going to make a mold of it and print it in my resin printer for you instead.
I didn't even print it in the resin printer. I just made a mold and we just cast it in resin. We didn't even print it. We just made it like the manufacturers make it, but we used a silicone mold.
It was awesome. So
my game
it turned out great. My game is complete again. I still haven't played it, though.
This is also my first pirate game, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this game over the years. It's one of those that I don't get to the table very often anymore either, but it's also a game that you can play with people that maybe aren't necessarily gamers. It's not super heavy.
Very much I would consider it almost a gateway game.
Yeah, absolutely. My brothers, they're not necessarily gamers. They'll play games. They love the ship upgrading aspect of this particular game. They love the fact that they can upgrade their sails to try to be able to attack first in battle or get their hull leveled up quickly so that they can get more treasure. One of my brothers in particular, he focuses on crew and cannons. He loves to go out and fight. The game is awesome. Fun to play. It plays fairly quickly. The rounds don't take too terribly long, especially if there's not a lot of battles. Even the battles don't take that long to play.
Because a lot of it's simultaneous action, right?
Right, yeah. It's good times.
I remember when we used to pull this one out. I don't recall much of the gameplay itself. I mostly remember being afraid I was not going to like it because of the fighting. Somebody's going to attack me or I have to attack somebody and it's going to ruin what I've been working on. I honestly can't say that I recall really how I feel about the game because it's been a long time. I just remember that piece.
So what you're saying is this game began your anxiety of games?
Possibly, yes. Wait, what anxiety?
That is Pirates Cove. Look for it. It's a Days of Wonder game. If you can find it, I would highly suggest grabbing it, picking it up, and enjoying it. And that's Pirates Cove.
Aeon's End is a game I first played up in Washington with Nathan Tenney. This is a game that he and his friends at work, they started playing games at lunch. So they'd get an hour lunch break. They would pull a game out, play it while they were at lunch. Quite often they had to make some changes to the game in order to get it to fit that time. But Aeon's End is one of those. Played it at his place. The first time we played it, it was just the two of us. It was really, really difficult. We got destroyed. So Aeon's End is a cooperative game. I guess I'll back up just a little bit. Published in 2016. Designed by Kevin Riley. And published by Indie Boards and Cards. Cooperative strategy game. It is for 1 to 4 players. It says that it's best with 2. I struggle to think that it would be best with 2 with my experience with the game, but
with my experiences too, I would say I almost enjoy it more with the full complement.
I totally think the more the better. I guess I haven't played it a ton. I've played the regular game a few times, and then I've played the legacy game more than that. But it's a 60-minute playtime. In this game, the survivors of a long-ago invasion have taken refuge in the forgotten underground city of Gravehold. There, the desperate remnants of society have learned that the energy of the very breaches, not britches, but breaches, the beings used to attack them can be repurposed through various gems, transforming the malign energies within into beneficial spells and weapons to aid their last line of defense, which are the Breach Mages. The Breach Mages are the characters that the players will be playing. In this game, you explore the deck building genre, and there's a lot of unique mechanisms to this game. One of those is the player turn order. You talked about the Rondel, Pirates Cove. I also am a big fan of the Rondel, and I've seen different implementations of the Rondel player order. This one's a little different. This one, depending on the number of players, there's a card for each player, and there's a deck, and in that card you also have 2 Nemesis cards. Nemesis's turn. You shuffle the cards up, and these are the turn order cards. You play this deck face down, you flip over a card, that's whose turn it is next. They use that to try to mimic and generate the feel and the chaos that comes in battle. That turn order is a very big determinant in how this game goes, because if you end up with a couple of Nemesis turns in a row to end one round, and then you begin the next round with a couple of Nemesis turns, that can be devastating. Even though that means that you have a bunch of player turns in a row, multiple Nemesis turns in a row can be really hard to overcome.
So if you have a bunch of hero turns in a row, is it equally devastating the other way around? Give you an equal benefit for having multiple player turns in a row versus having the Nemesis go multiple times in a row?
That's kind of a tough question, because yes and no. I mean, you have the opportunity to attack the monsters that have come through the breach, put some measures into place to prevent them from attacking.
Your answer, I think, is spot on, that it's yes and no, because sometimes it just depends. It depends on what's going on currently in the game. If there are a bunch of monsters out, it could be super helpful. If there's not, I mean, it's nice because you could spend time improving your deck. Not always. In fact, more often than not, I would say it's not as equally a big a deal. Like I say, it can be. And maybe I'm just not very good at the game. I don't know. The game is set up. You pull out a nemesis that you'll be facing. They're all called the Unnamed. It's represented by a card. There's the Rageborn, Prince of Gluttons. There's a bunch of different ones that you can end up facing, and each one is unique. Each one has unique abilities. They each have their own attack deck that you mix some basic shared cards into as well to form the full deck. But on the Nemesis turn, you'll flip over the top card of the attack deck, and it could be a minion, kind of what you were alluding to with the monsters that come through. It could be a power, or it could be an actual attack. You're defending the town of Gravehold. If Gravehold ever reaches 0 health, then players lose. This game can be very, very difficult. Seems like a little bit over 50% win rate in this, which I like that. We've talked before about games that can be difficult. This, I think, strikes that really, really well because it does seem to present a fairly evenly matched system. Sometimes the game wins, sometimes you do.
I like that. Especially a co-op game should not be easy. It shouldn't just be breeze through it.
You know, it's funny. I'm the same way. Some of our favorite games, like Gloomhaven, have we ever failed a mission?
We have once, but I guess at the same point, there's several of those that hasn't felt like it's a breeze. There's somebody who gets knocked out. Logan seems to be the one that's undiable.
Not only that, you get the feeling, even 2/3 of the way through, how in the world are we going to complete this mission?
We say that all the time.
A lot. Even though we typically are going to win and we complete the mission successfully, it still has that feel of, my goodness, how are we going to do this? It seems overwhelming. So many monsters or whatever the goal is, it seems daunting in the middle of playtime of the quest that we're on.
I mentioned the cards in the attack deck. If you pull out an attack card, it happens. It tells you what happens with the attack, and then it goes away. Power cards, they come into play, and they don't actually resolve yet. They usually have a certain number of power on them. You put power tokens on them. Each Nemesis turn, you'll remove a power token. And then once you remove the last power token, then it happens. You have the ability, the opportunity to do something to make it so that that power does not resolve, or if it resolves, it is to a much lesser degree. For example, Woven Sky is one of those. It comes into play, it says, to discard this card, you have to discard 3 cards. So one player on their turn is going to have to discard 3 cards. Essentially, that player's turn is done. There's not much more they're going to be able to do. Once it resolves, it triggers the Unleash ability of the monster. Every monster has a unique Unleash ability. The game tells you what that is. This one, it unleashes, and any player suffers 4 wounds. And 4 wounds is pretty significant. The other thing, when you flip over a minion card, that minion comes into play, and it stays in play until it's defeated. You're trying to kill the Nameless by causing enough wounds, generally high amounts of wounds, like 70 or so. All the while, when they get these minions into play, you have to take these minions out too, or else they just devastate you. Some of these minions will come in and they'll tell you to put 3 shields on them. So no matter how many wounds you cause to this thing, the first attack is going to just get rid of. So if it has 1 shield and your attack has a power of 8, it's all wasted on that, and you don't get to actually kill it until the next attack, and hopefully you have enough to do that. Now the nice thing is with some of your attacks, you get to choose the order in which they resolve. If you have multiples, you can take care of that yourself, but if you only have 1, it can be totally wasted on a shield. So on the player side of things, each player has a player board. Each player also has a unique ability. There's a bunch of different ones. They also have a unique starting deck. Most of the cards in the starting decks are the same. They will usually have 1 unique card and sometimes a little different makeup of how many crystals, which are used to purchase, or basic attack spell is a spark. Another thing very unique to this game, there's a learning curve to it, and it takes a lot of, you got to practice. The order in which you play your cards, the order in which you discard your cards is very important because you never shuffle your discard pile in this game.
Which is very unique and sometimes a struggle to keep that straight because
Totally.
It's just a natural tendency when your cards discard, when you go to pick that up, you want to shuffle that.
It's really hard for me because I'm shuffling my discard all the time, even when it's not needed yet, because I'm wanting to make sure that I get them all mixed up really well. I give them a good shuffle. So I'm shuffling it all the time in other games. So I have to really, really work to not do that in this game. I like it just because it's, again, unique. It makes it a little bit predictable. You know what's coming. You know, okay, I should have these cards coming in this order. When you're out of cards to draw, you pick up your discard pile, flip it over, put it on your draw pile to form your new draw pile. Then you just start drawing them in the order in which they were discarded.
You do get the opportunity to kind of adjust that because you can discard cards, and when you buy cards, you can hopefully, and I'll use the air quotes there, kind of manipulate your deck. No, not air quotes. I mean, you can manipulate your deck by when and where you buy cards and how you discard those cards, but not by much.
Right. And once you discarded them or whatever, then it's set.
Absolutely.
So, above your player board, this is where the breaches come in. Each player has 4 breaches. One of them in the first slot is open. So breach number 1 is open. The other 3 are closed breaches. Hopefully throughout the game are going to be focusing them and or opening them. On your turn, when you play a spell, you don't just cast a spell. You have to prepare it by putting it into one of these breach slots. You can put any spell you want in your open breach. So during the player's turn, you do things in a specific order. The first thing you do is the casting phase. If you have any prepared spells in open breaches, you have the option to cast them if you want. If you have any spells that are prepared in closed breaches, they must be cast. It's because it's not stable. The idea of this is that it's not a stable thing. You don't have total control over it. As you cast the spell, you play it and it immediately goes to your discard pile. And then you have the main phase. You can play your gems or relics, gain cards from the supply, can focus a breach. The breaches are just a little square card. And on the breach, it tells you the cost to focus and the cost to open. You rotate the card to focus it. And then on the top portion of the card is the new cost to focus it again or to open it. Depending on how much you want to spend, hopefully you have enough that you can just open it and not waste money every turn trying to focus them. The nice thing about focusing it is it's a lot cheaper than opening, and when you focus it, that gives you the option to prepare a spell to that breach that can then be used on your next turn, at the beginning of your next turn during the casting phase. After you perform all those actions, you have the draw phase and also the discard. When you open the breach, you just flip that little card over, and there's no more rotation or anything necessary. It's just there and open and ready to use at any time. As far as the deck building part of this game, it's very similar to a lot of the other deck builders that you've probably played. The big difference is, again, no shuffling of the deck, playing them as they were played or discarded, which can make a difference because you can have cards that you want to get together, but if you acquired them at different times, they're going to be far enough apart that you may never actually get to play them together. There's a lot of strategy in that part of it, which again, for me, is something that I like.
I enjoy the game. I really enjoyed the Legacy version that you, me, Ryan, Logan played. We didn't quite complete that.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. And it wasn't because we played it 10 times either. I like the Legacy version because the Legacy version allows you to generate a Breach Mage that you can use in the base game.
Right. And it's cool, too, because, well, like many of these Legacy games, you get to customize it a little bit. I agree, though. I like the Legacy version better.
The base version, there's been a second version, some additional content that's out there as well. I enjoy the game. As long as you don't accidentally shuffle your deck, the game runs smoothly. It's something that we should play more often.
Agreed.
I chose to talk about, it's been a while since I played it, but it is a great battle game. And it's Mythic Battles Pantheon. It is a game for 2 to 4 players. It's best with 2. Plays in 60 to 90 minutes. Designed by Benoit Voigt. Publisher is Monolith and Mythic Games. The premise behind this is Hera, tired of Zeus's infidelity, decides to take her revenge and releases the Titans on Mount Olympus. In the ensuing battle, the power liberated by the combatants ignites in a combustion that shatters the earth. In the ensuing deflagration, the weakest gods are obliterated, rendered down into small fragments of power that constituted their being. The stronger ones were able to resist total annihilation. Even their prodigious power could not save them entirely. As the survivors fell from the broken mountain, the shards of their divinity and the remnants of those that did not survive were scattered to the 4 corners of a now broken world. As they awoke, each god found themselves to be but a shadow of their former selves. They were still mighty, stronger than any mortal, but they were no longer all-powerful, no longer immortal. Each one could sense the fragments of power, now fallen to the earth. By collecting these, they could regain their former grandeur and, if they could amass enough, stand in front of a new pantheon reshaped in their image. So with this game, you started out with all of the units that are available. Whether you're playing the base game, have expansions, you put all of the units out and you're going to draft. There's different scenarios you can play. You can just play a skirmish as well. If you're playing one of these scenarios, it's going to tell you how many points that each player is going to be able to draft. Each unit will have a point value. The point value is going to be determined on player count. For example, a skirmish, if there's 2 players, each player gets 18 points. If it's 3 players, 16 points, and 4 players will be 14 points. The first thing you're going to do is each player will select a god. There's Zeus, there's Hades, Aphrodite, Ares, tons of gods to pick from. Like I said, there's quite a few expansions out. There's a lot of content already released. Once it goes to retail, they'll actually bring out the Norse mythology into this. The Ragnarok is what they just kickstarted last year, which brings all the Norse mythology into it. Everybody gets to pick a god. In reverse order, you start picking different units that are going to encompass your army. There are monsters, heroes, and then there are troops. When you pick a unit, you're going to gain a number of cards. For example, if you pick the Hydra comes with 4 activation cards, and those will get shuffled into your deck when you start the game. In addition to the activation cards that each unit can give you, some of them will give you what are called Art of War cards. And Art of War cards are super important in the game. Everybody starts with 3 in their hand. Zeus, for example, gives you 2 Art of War cards, whereas Ares gives you 0. On your turn, you get to activate one of your units. You can do simple actions, or you can do 1 complex action. If you choose to do simple actions, you can do 1 to 2 actions. Walking is a simple action, attacking is a simple action. Examples of complex actions would be running. If you choose to run with a character, that is the only thing they can do. Whether it's a god, whether it's a monster, each character, with the exception of troops, will have certain talents that they have in the game. For example, many of the larger or stronger units that you may have will have Mighty Throw, which means when you attack, you're going to roll dice. The dice have a blank side, and then swords valuing in 1, 2, 3, up to 5. How combat works, you're going to roll your attack value, and that's the number of dice you roll. And then you are going to save any 5s, because those 5s you'll be allowed to re-roll and add whatever you roll again to that number. If you don't have a 5, you can sacrifice a die that actually has a sword on it to increase the value of another die that you've rolled. For example, if I have a 4, I can get rid of a 1 to increase that 4 to a 5, and then in turn it will explode. I'll get a chance to re-roll it. Any dice it's not worth to spend to bump a die up to 5, I can save those and add a +1 to my dice after I re-roll the 5s. Any blanks I have, if I have Mighty Throw, for example, I can throw a unit from the area I'm in into an adjacent area. If I'm just going to throw a hero, I just need 1 blank. It takes 2 blanks to throw a monster or a god, and it takes 3 blanks to throw a titan. Now, we didn't talk about Titans. Titans, they don't come in the base game. I only have one. I have Atlas, and the Titans are ridiculously tough. For example, if I look at the stats of Zeus, which is one of the more powerful gods, Zeus has an attack of 8 and a defense of 9. Atlas has an attack of 10 and a defense of 10. Atlas can move 2, Zeus can move 2. Atlas has a range of 1, meaning that he has a ranged attack all the time, whereas Zeus has a range of 0, which means he needs to be in the same space as whatever he is attacking. That being said, each unit will typically have either a passive ability or a special attack. Sometimes they'll have multiple abilities. They can also have permanent abilities and active abilities. Zeus has a special attack. It costs 2 Art of War cards to this his lightning attack, but he can make an attack rolling dice equal to his attack value. It gives him a range of 3, and it's an area attack. Every single unit that is in that area will be affected by his attack. Super powerful attack, but it's kind of expensive because it costs 2 Art of War cards to use. On your turn, you only get to activate 1 unit. You can spend an Art of War card after you activate your first unit to activate a second unit. That is one of the maneuvers you can do. The second one you can do is you can discard an Art of War card to draw 2 cards. You can also discard an Art of War card to search your deck for a specific card.
That seems nice.
Yeah, so you can only activate units based on what you have in your hand. Every unit that you draft, you'll gain the activation cards that you're going to get shuffled into your deck. At the beginning of your turn, you only get to draw 1 card. As you're playing cards, you may be looking to activate a specific unit. It may be super tactical to activate the Hydra this turn. And I don't have a Hydra activation card in my hand. I can discard an Art of War card to go search my deck, put the Hydra card in my hand, shuffle my deck. Super helpful to do that. Some of the abilities, like I talked about with Zeus's lightning ability, some abilities will cost Art of War cards to activate. Final thing that you can do with Art of War cards is if you have a flying unit, it gets attacked. That unit can use the evade action, which means it cannot be attacked for the remainder of the round. Now, there's other ways that you can do these maneuvers. One of the complex actions that only gods can perform, they can absorb what are called omphalises, which are divine stones. They've started calling them divine stones now that, because this is based on Greek mythology. The initial Mythic Battles Pantheon is based on Greek mythology, but now they're bringing out Norse mythology and then Egyptian mythology. So they're calling them divine stones. That's one of the ways, in fact, one of the primary ways to win the game is to absorb whatever the scenario is. Typically, it's going to be 4 omphalises or 4 divine stones. And that is one of the complex actions that the deities or the gods can do, is absorb omphalises. And the only way to do that is to be in a location where there is an omphalis. Other units can pick up omphalises or divine stones and move them, but only a god can absorb them. When you absorb a divine stone, you're going to gain a card. It's an omphalis card. You can use that card as an Art of War card. You can also use that to heal your god too, which is super helpful because if your god dies, then you are out of the game, which is one of the other ways to win. If you can defeat your opponent's god, then you win the game. One other way to do a maneuver is you can discard 2 activation cards of a unit that you no longer have in the game. So if someone defeats my Hydra and I have 2 Hydra cards in my hand, I can discard both of those Hydra cards and it will basically act as an Art of War card for me. It's not gumming up my hand, doesn't become useless. I can still use those unless I only have 1. But as I'm losing units, they don't have to match. So if I have 2 units that are dead and I have an activation for each of those, discard both of them for 1 maneuver action. One of the things I thought was interesting, as you're taking damage, there's a slide on each of the cards for the units that you're using. Your abilities decrease as you take damage. Your attack's going to decrease. Your movement's going to decrease. Sometimes you get to where you can't even use your powers. They basically become so wounded that you can't use your special abilities, which can make it even more difficult, especially if your god is your unit that's taking the most damage and you're trying to protect him and get him pulled back out of battle. If he loses his movement, it's going to be that much more difficult to do. Final unit that I didn't talk about are troops. Troops are the human factor in this. For example, there's Spartans, there's hoplites. They don't have health. Their health is equal to the number of miniatures that are on the board, and they move as a group. If I attack hoplites with a Hydra, for example, and I do 3 hits with it, they're going to lose 3 miniatures off the board. Once they're off the board, they're defeated. However, a god can call those troops back. The troops are unique in that way that they, even once they're eliminated from the game, they can come back on the board. One thing I really love is it has 3D terrain in it. So there's ruins, and you have the pillars for the ruins. And you have forests, which will have trees, and you have rocks, which will have actual rocks on the board. Each of those things are interacted with differently. Forests, you get a +1 to defense against flying creatures and against ranged enemies. In the ruins, you get +1 defense versus melee enemies. And then finally, if you have fly or climb, you can get up on the rocks and have +1 range and do +1 damage. Also, for example, Heracles, he can throw terrain. So he can pick up a pillar and chuck it and do an area attack. He can pick up a tree and chuck it into another area and do an area attack on anything and everything in that area.
I like that.
And it removes that piece from the board. It eliminates that terrain, may make it so he doesn't gain a benefit, or if there's still terrain in that area, he would still gain it. I love the fact that it's interactable, that you can actually do things with the pieces on the board, the actual terrain pieces. I thought that was a nice touch. The miniatures in this, the sculpts are amazing. I was a little disappointed with some of the 3D terrain that came with the game. The rocks.
So you made your own?
So I made my own.
And he was just showing me some of the rocks that he made, and they look fantastic.
The nice thing is I'd already made some of the ruins, the pillars that like come with the game. I'd already made some for one of our role-playing games that we were using, so I can just use those. And I already have trees. So the 3D components are still there. I have the Kickstarter version of this, and it came with ruins with pillars also. They're just little plastic ones. It's better than the 3D ones that come with the retail version of the game. I would recommend upgrading your 3D components. As beautiful as the miniatures and those sculpts are, it seems just hokey to have terrain that doesn't look as nice. But that's just me. Overall, the game plays nicely. I love the tactical aspect of it. Each area on the map has a capacity, so only a certain number of units can be in each area. The talents and the way the talents interact with each other, because there's a lot of different talents your units can have, and how they work with other talents that maybe some of your other units have, and some of the special powers that they have. Overall, it's a great game. I love the tactics. I love that it's not super complex, but there's enough tactical depth to it that it play differently each time, picking different people during the draft, different monsters or different units. Love it. And that's when I probably ought to get that to the table, Nathan.
The 60 to 90 minutes is something that allows you to sample more of that content as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking forward to the game. As soon as you brought the box out, I got a little glassy-eyed and excited. I'm excited. I think the game looks really good. I love that it uses all the different mythology and not just focusing on one. The opportunity for other mythology to be added into it, I think that's great. The game sounds exciting.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. I was going to ask that very question. Why haven't we played this?
I would highly recommend it. Not an inexpensive game to get into. A lot of content. I don't know when their next Kickstarter is going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Egyptian mythology, and I would imagine that they'll have access to all the previous content as well.
We talk about different themes that we like. Love these themes, the Egyptian, the Norse, all of these. For whatever reason, they just always intrigue me. I'm excited about it.
I'm really excited to play this game.
I'm there with you, Dave. One of the themes that really intrigues me. In fact, I bought this game from my cousin Dennis. I didn't even have to really look to see what the game was. Just saw that it looked amazing and it was Greek mythology. And I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it from you.
And because you have a problem.
Well, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, let's definitely not talk about that because I don't want him to fix his problem.
So those are our 3 games that we talked about. Fighting games, battle games. Aeon's End is one I definitely want to try. We definitely need to get Mythic Battles Pantheon to the table. And I'm always willing to play Pirates Cove.
All 3 of these games are winners on my book.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table. We're looking for round 3 for our next fighting game. Tune in next week, and you'll see what we got at the game table.
Boom, boom, boom. As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter, @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braiding Detergent for our music.
And that's Pirates Cove.
You don't want to suggest not enjoying it?
No, I definitely do not want to suggest not enjoying it. In fact, I can't think of a game that I would suggest, Andy, don't enjoy that game.
I can.
Oh, yeah? What one?
Terraforming Mars.
That's the one.
Because you have to keep up that facade?
It's not a facade. So, Mythic Battles Pantheon. It's a fun game. So that's all the time we have today. And...
real funny. Yeah, I didn't talk that long. How much time did I take, Nate?
You took 22 minutes.
I did? Are you kidding me?
oh my hell, yes you did.
And then the only other question I have is, what do the exploding dice do to replayability? Do you have to buy new dice every time you play? Is it a...
I'm editing that out anyway. No, you can go on, Dave. I'll leave it in there.
That's fine.
We should leave the pause in there, too.
Where he stumped himself. What do I say next?